You are into the second night now. The hum, the one you never noticed until it stopped, is gone. The refrigerator, the well pump kicking on at 3 in the morning, the little fan in the bathroom, all of it silent. And the quiet in your house is the loudest thing you have ever heard. The food in your freezer has gone soft. You have a flashlight standing on its end on the counter, pointed at the ceiling, because that is the only way to light a whole room with one bulb. Your phone is at 11%, and there is nothing to charge it with. And somewhere out past your back fence, across a field you can barely make out in the dark, there is a farmhouse with a warm, yellow glow in the kitchen window, and a barn with the lights on. And you already know. You know those people did not lose one single thing in their freezer tonight. There is no roar of a generator out there. There is just light and warmth and water moving through pipes and the quiet certainty of a family that decided a long, long time ago that nobody outside their property line was going to hold the switch to their house. They did it with a box. The box costs about $50. It is not a generator. It is not a battery wall with an app. It is a flat steel thing the size of a paperback book. And the reason almost nobody you know has ever heard of it is not that it was banned. It is that there was never any money in telling you about it. I learned what was inside that box standing in a buggy shop outside Charm, Ohio in the fall of 2014, watching a man named Amos Yoder show me a panel his father had wired by lamplight in 1961. Amos was close to 80 then. He had been through the big windstorm that came across Ohio in the summer of 2012, the one that knocked out power to a couple million homes for the better part of a week, and he told me, the way you would mention the weather, that his family hadn't really noticed. By the time I am done here, you are going to know exactly what is inside that box, why the knowledge of it quietly fell out of the extension pamphlets sometime after the Second World War, and how a man with a 40-year-old house can put one in this weekend with no permit and without starting over. Let me back up, because I came at this as a skeptic. I spent most of my working life around wire and panels, and I did exactly what you are probably thinking about doing right now. When my own power went out one too many times, I got a quote for a whole home standby generator with an automatic transfer switch. $14,000 installed. Before that, I had already wasted better than $2,000 on a portable unit I dragged out into the rain and ran extension cords through a cracked open window, which is dangerous and which I am ashamed of now. And here is the thing nobody told me. Even after all that money, I was not independent. I had just changed who owned the switch. A generator with a circuit board in it can fail. A propane tank runs dry. I had spent $14,000 to be slightly less dependent than I was before. What Amos had cost a fraction of that, and it had been running through every blackout in Holmes County for more than 50 years. He called it the changeover. In the English world, you would call it a manual interlock or an interlock kit. It is a small, sliding plate of steel that bolts onto the front of an ordinary breaker panel, the same kind that is hanging on a wall in your basement or your garage right now. That sliding plate does one job, and it does it with no electronics, no software, and no way to be turned off from a distance. It physically makes it impossible to feed your house from the grid and from your own power at the same time. When the grid is up, the plate sits one way and your main breaker is on. When the grid goes down, you turn the main breaker off. The plate slides over, and that motion uncovers a second breaker that lets your own power, a generator, or an inverter, or a battery setup feed the whole panel. Both can never be on. The steel makes the rule. A man, not a circuit board, makes the decision. Now, why does that matter so much? And why were people for 2 generations told it was dangerous? Here is the honest physics, and the danger is real, which is exactly why the simple, steel answer is so good. When the power company's line goes dead, a lineman climbs the pole, believing it is dead. If your generator is feeding your panel, and there is nothing stopping that power from running backward out your service wire, it travels back up to the transformer on the pole, and a transformer run in reverse steps your house voltage back up to thousands of volts on a line a man is holding in his hands. That is the thing they were right to be afraid of. It is called backfeed, and it has killed people. So for decades, the easy thing was to tell homeowners it could not be done safely, and to sell them an expensive, sealed machine instead. But the interlock plate solves the danger completely and mechanically. With the main breaker off and that steel plate in place, your power physically cannot reach the grid. It is, today, fully recognized in the National Electrical Code. The listed kits are legal. They were never the problem. They were just never advertised. And here is where the paper trail starts. Before 1935, more than 9 out of 10 farms in this country had no grid line at all, and a great many of them made their own power, stored it in glass jar batteries in the cellar, and switched between sources with exactly this kind of hand-thrown gear. There were USDA farmers' bulletins on home lighting plants, numbered up in the 1400s, that laid the whole thing out plainly for any farmer who could read. Then the Rural Electrification Administration came in 1935, and subsidized copper went up on subsidized poles. And to get those federal loans, the cooperatives signed on to the idea that the new line would be the source of power. Self-generation was not outlawed. It was simply made to look foolish. Why keep a battery bank in the cellar when the wall socket was cheaper this month? Within 15 years, the home plants were torn out by the thousands, and the bulletins that explained them stopped being reprinted. By the time I was a boy, you could not find that knowledge in an extension office. There was no conspiracy. There was just no marketing budget for a flat piece of steel that costs $50 and lasts a century. There is no quarterly earnings report on a thing you buy once and never replace. Now, I know what some of you are telling yourselves. You are thinking this is fine for a man building a new place out in the country, but your house is 40 years old, the walls are closed up, and this could never be for you. Set that down. This next part is built for exactly your house. The interlock kit is made for your specific panel. You read the brand stamped on the door, Square D, Siemens, Eaton, whatever it says, and you order the kit for that panel. The kit itself runs around $50 to $70. You will also want a power inlet box, the little recessed socket you mount on an outside wall to plug your generator into, about $30. A 2-pole breaker for that incoming circuit, $20. A length of properly rated cord. Honestly, walking into a supply house today, you are looking at somewhere around $120 all in, and I am not going to lie to you and pretend it is $50 if you are buying everything new. $50 is the floor. $50 is the price if a friend hands you the breaker and you scrounge the inlet at a salvage yard. The principle is what is cheap. Compare it to a $14,000 standby unit, and $120 is a rounding error. The kit bolts on with the panel cover removed and a screwdriver. It changes nothing already in your panel. If you have never had that cover off in your life, pay an electrician for 1 hour to set it and check your township rules, because they vary. But this is not a remodel. This is a Saturday. And there is one more piece. The piece Amos almost didn't mention. The part the plain folks know, and the rest of us never figured out. The thing that wrecks most people's first try at this is the well pump. A pump motor down a well does not draw what its label says when it starts. For half a second, it can pull 3 or 4 times that much, a hard surge, and a modest inverter or a small generator sees that surge and trips right out, and the homeowner decides the whole idea is junk. The Amish answer is a part the size of a thumb. It is a hard start capacitor, a little potential relay and capacitor wired across the pump that smooths out that starting punch so a smaller, cheaper source can swing it. It costs $10, maybe $15 at any pump or refrigeration supply. With that one part in line, a small generator that should have no business starting your well pump starts it every single time. That is the difference between a system that limps and a system that just works, and it is almost never in the instructions. So that is the whole of it. A $50 plate of steel that makes backfeed physically impossible. A modest source on the other side of it, whatever you can afford, a generator now, and maybe batteries later. And a $12 capacitor that lets that source punch above its weight. That is what is behind the warm window across the field. Not magic, not a miracle, just a piece of plain competence that used to live in every farmhouse in America and got quietly outspent, never disproven, by people who would rather sell you the same kilowatt every month for the rest of your life. If you are the kind of person who feels in your gut that something useful was set aside, not because it stopped working, but because it stopped making anybody money, then you already know what to do. Tell me 3 things in the comments. Tell me the brand stamped on your breaker panel. Tell me the year your house was wired. And tell me the first 3 circuits you would put on that changeover board, the freezer, the well pump, the furnace blower, in your own order. Be specific. I read them. Subscribing here is not about helping me. It is about standing with a growing number of people in their 50s and 60s and 70s who are quietly taking back the things their grandfathers knew cold and their fathers were never shown. Next week, I'm going to show you something that sounds like a tall tale until you watch it work. How a man kept a full refrigerator cold through an entire Ohio July on a single flame no bigger than a candle, no compressor, no electricity at all, built off a propane design and a service manual from 1948. Bring your skepticism. You are going to need it for about 4 minutes. Now, before I let you go, I want to walk you back through the 2 places people go wrong, because I would rather you do this right than do it twice. The first is the one I just gave you. Folks size their generator or their inverter to the running watts of the pump and the freezer, and they forget the starting surge, and the first time everything kicks on at once, it trips and they quit. Size for the surge, or put that little hard start capacitor on the well pump, and the problem just disappears. The second one is the dangerous one, so hear me. Do not ever take a cord and feed power backward into a dryer outlet to energize your house. People do it. It is called a suicide cord for a reason, and it can kill a lineman a mile away who thinks his wire is dead. The $50 interlock exists precisely so you never have to. The steel makes backfeed impossible, and it does it for less than you spent on the last tank of gas for the generator that left you cold anyway. Get the plate. Get it matched to your panel. That is the whole game.